Hello and welcome to the Modern Fairy Sightings Podcast, where we listen to people's fairy encounters. But take heed, we're not talking about winged Tinkerbells here. These are real fairies, real encounters that took people like you and I by surprise. Stay a while and hear their stories. My name is Jo Hickey Hall, and I'm a folklore researcher. Hello dear listener, how are you doing? We are certainly passing through some kind of threshold at the moment. It feels very much like that anyway. The astrological movements and alignments have many of us feeling rather strange. It feels like a good time to hold the hand of a loved one, whoever that might be, even if it's a metaphysical hand of a departed loved one who still remains close to your heart, because love never dies. We are drawing close to Beltane, and together with Samhain, these times are when the thresholds between the worlds are particularly porous. Add that into the mix, and no wonder we are all feeling it at the moment. As I've said before, at times like this, the ground may feel unsteady and things may be shifting fast in your lives. It's easy to feel like losing yourself in whatever distractions arise, but instead, if you concentrate on those things that you know serve you well, and bring you closer to your own true self, you'll be doing a grand job. Now, firstly, I just want to say a huge thank you to my dear curious crew of patrons over on Patreon, without whom this podcast would not be. Thank you so much for your support, and a special mention to Ashley and Tom, who have joined recently on the Weird Folk tier. I love our community, and if you'd like to join us, we have a Q&A with Kate Ray this coming week on the 26th of April, and we have two tea ceremony events coming up in May, one on May the 11th and one on May the 20th, and we have moved them around so that they hopefully fit people's time zones wherever you are. Now, this latest episode is a fine collection of encounters and experiences from two sisters who grew up in the Staffordshire Moorlands in the north of England. Twins Gemma and Kate lived on a farm in Leek as children, and their experiences there include trooping gnomes, lights in trees, a visitation from a raven at a funeral, spectral monks chanting, disappearing and reappearing objects, and much, much more. In the bonus, Gemma tells me about a haunted hotel in Devon that used to be owned by a member of her family, and all the spooky events which took place there. Plus, I will read some excerpts of Staffordshire folklore, and let me tell you, this part of the country has for centuries overflowed with supernatural lore and weird tales. It is, quite frankly, a hotspot. Enjoy the episode and see you at the end for a quick chat. As always, if you want to contact me, it's scarlettofthefay.com. At the website there you'll find show notes and a contact form, and I always love to hear from you. This episode is dedicated to our guest's much loved, recently departed Auntie Jill. Time to
The right place to start would be talking about the farm that we grew up on, so we moved to this farm, which is in a really, really rural location when we were 5 years old. Oh, that's my phone, sorry.
Sorry.
So we moved to this farm when we were 5, so there was Kate and myself, and then we've got an older sister. And then my mum and my dad, and we lived there for 13 years, and we really did have the most magical childhood at this farm. It was off a B road, up a winding track, and literally in the middle of nowhere. And we spent our childhood climbing over dry stone walls, and there was a brook that we used to go to, and we used to meet our friend, and she lived across the fields, and the brook was kind of halfway, so we used to go and meet her there, and just I spent hours in the summer evenings and just doing what kids do. And I've got a bit of an obsession with crystals, so I can remember being a child and there were lots of rocks. I used to pick them up all the time and see if there was any sparkly bits there by the brook, and it was just wonderful. But the house definitely had some strange things that happened. So just to name a few, the footsteps, that was the first supernatural or unexplainable experience for me in that house. And I was about 9 years old, and it was the first time that I'd been left in the house alone, because my mum had popped into the local town. It was like a 15-minute drive. That's how rural the location was. And I'd stood at the window and I'd watched my mum and my sisters get in the car and then drive off. And I thought, oh, excellent. So I just sat down, put the TV on, and then I heard the footsteps in the room above me, and you literally can follow them from left to right. So it was literally just footsteps walking across the room above. So I immediately ran upstairs, thinking that it was my my twin sister playing a trick on me. So I ran up the stairs. I checked the bedroom, which is directly above the room that I was sat in. I checked the bathroom, the airing cupboard, everywhere I could think of, and I couldn't find her. So I thought, oh, she must have somehow snuck past me and gone to the other side of the house. So as Kate said, it's like an L-shaped house. So you'd have like a smaller kitchen in the centre, and then you'd have the other part of the house. So I ran to the other part, checked all of there, and I was, I was a bit confused. I couldn't find her, because we used to play hide and seek and tricks and things with each other all the time. So I thought, okay, I must have imagined that. So I went and sat back down, watched the TV, but waiting for my mum to get back. So as soon as I heard the car pull up, I was really intrigued to see if Kate would get out of the car, which she did. So again, I thought to myself, right, I thought I heard the footsteps, but I must have imagined it, and that was that. But over the years, it became such a regular occurrence, these footsteps. Everybody in our house heard them. My mum, a family friend that used to come and stay quite a lot, and it just became part and parcel, didn't it, really? But there was always, for me, there was always a feeling of being watched, always, and it was quite an uncomfortable feeling. But the worst part was when there was a storm, the electricity would trip and somebody would have to go out to the barn to flick the switch. Now this barn, you would be stood there and you would always be, as a child it was quite frightening actually, because you'd be in pitch black. I don't know why our parents sent us out to do it, really. They should have done it. You'd be in pitch black, right, trying to fumble with this, trying to find the switch to put the electrics back on, and constantly looking over your shoulder, convinced that there was somebody stood right behind you. But this barn, I mentioned to you, my mum has reported it. Well, there was the smell of tobacco smoke that she noticed when she went in this barn.
So this is when we first moved there, and
yes,
these are the things that happened to our mother. So she smelled tobacco
smoke
only in the barn, though,
and there was strong. No, and there was this grumbling noise that she reported, which was a bit like,
she said she heard like an old
man's voice grumbling when she
was in there one day.
And she smelt this tobacco smoke in the kitchen as well. And another amazing thing that she saw, and I was speaking to her about this earlier in the week actually, is that at the end of the barn, the opposite end of the barn, there used to be a laburnum tree there. And we had on this farm, we had a couple of fields and a couple of small stables, not a lot of land, but there was a lot of land surrounding. There was the moorlands surrounding us. But she went one evening it was dusk, she went in to get the pony, bring them in, the pony and the donkey, and she noticed in this laburnum tree that there were these lights, and she stood there watching them for a moment, thinking, oh, they must be fireflies. And then she thought to herself, no, we don't have fireflies in this country. And she realised that what she was seeing was something that was, as she said in her words, supernatural. So I asked her, how far away were you from the tree? And she said,
a metre.
Yeah. So she could clearly see them. And once she realised that they were a bit supernatural, she thought, no, I haven't got time for this today. So, but that was just another thing that would have happened in this house. Yeah. So lots of amazing things. But I think the most magical story is something that happened to Kate.
I was 18 and we just sold the house. So we were getting ready to move, and I think there was about 2 weeks until we were due to go. So at the time, it was one night and I was asleep, and I woke up in the middle of the night, about 3 a.m. And you know when you usually wake up in the night, you're tired, rub your eyes, turn over and go back to sleep? But in this particular instance, I was wide awake. So my friend was staying with me at the time. So I looked across to him. He was asleep. I thought, oh, okay. So just started to lay down to go back to sleep when I heard a noise coming from outside the bedroom window. So as Gemma's already mentioned, the house was an L-shaped, and then so there's 2 stories on either side, and it's linked by a single story kitchen. So in the bedroom that I was in, we'd got a window to the front overlooking the courtyard, and then there was a window to the side, and if you were to look out of that, you'd look down on top of the kitchen roof. So there's nothing there. There's like just open space outside of this window.
Your windowsill was actually so high that you couldn't really.
So to get
reach
onto
it.
that windowsill, I used to have to stand on the wooden post of my bed and then sort of hold on to the top latch of the window and pull myself up.
It's very high, wasn't it?
Yes, it must have been 1.5 meters on the floor, something like that. And I was a kid, 18. So anyway, so I'd heard this noise and I was a bit confused. So I sat up and I started to listen. And I can only describe it as chanting, which was very odd, considering we were in such a rural location with the nearest neighbour at least a mile, 2 miles across the field in all directions. There was 2 houses close, but I mean, you've got to go over a few fields to get to them.
Yeah.
So there was nothing there. And so I listened to it, trying to decipher what it was, as you do. Wasn't thinking anything spooky at the time, even though a lot of things had happened to us in that house over the years. This wasn't one of the times when I was like, in a spooky mood or anything. It was in the middle of the night. I was asleep, so I was listening to it, and so it was a really low tone, and I don't know what language it was. It must have been Latin or something similar. I really don't know, but so I just sat there listening, and it was something like, I'll try and do an impression of it, but it was kind of like, I know that sounds silly, but I don't know how else to decide.
No, I know, yeah.
So I'm sat there and I'm looking around my room thinking, what is that? But it was clearly coming from right outside that window. So then I reach across to my friend and I shake him and I have my finger on my lip and I say, shh, and then I point to my ear and listen, hoping that this voice didn't stop. So he sat up and he listened and he looked at me and he was like, what's that? And I'm like, I don't know. So we both sat there listening to it together, thinking, okay. But then the most interesting thing that happened, then a bell started to toll in the background. So I'm talking, not a hand bell, like a big church bell, as if, one that would sound like it was on a rope from the rhythm that it was and the sound that it was making.
Yeah.
Ding, 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 ding. Let me assure you, there was no ecclesiastical buildings around the location of that house. Well, there wasn't at this time anyway.
There still isn't now. It's literally...
Well, there still isn't now, no, but anyway, so this sound carried on for so long that in the end we just laid back down and went to sleep.
Yeah.
With it still talking away. It was very strange.
Like a chanting with the bell, but
Yeah.
right outside your bedroom window, which was so high that it was, you could not, you had a problem trying to open the window each time because this windowsill was so high. This house was a bit higgledy-piggledy. It was a really old farmhouse, wasn't it?
Well, it is an old farmhouse, yeah.
Still is.
I've done some research on it in the latter years. I mean, so we moved out of the house and told a few people the story, and some people believed it, some people don't. I know it sounds crazy, but I mean, I can only tell you what I heard. And to this day, my friend, who, when I first became friends with him and he came to our house and I said, by the way, this house is haunted, loads of things have happened to us. And he was like, yeah, didn't believe it, wouldn't have any of it until that happened to him. And to this day, if you ask him, he does believe in ghosts, as he would say, because it's just totally unexplainable. But anyway, so
what I think is amazing is years and years later, you did some research about the area, and this I think this is incredible, Jo.
Well, the building, parts of it date back to the 17th century, but it's been altered a lot over the years, as these rural farm buildings are.
Yeah.
But I wondered about that voice for many years. So probably about 4 years ago, I looked into it to see, because it sounded religious, and with the bell as well tolling in the background.
Yeah.
So I did look into it. Well, I don't know if this is, but so what I found was online was that in the 17th century there was an abbey not too far away.
Right.
That owned land, had some land
there
in that area.
Yep.
So there was some Cistercian monks that farmed sheep in that area, and I think they had just a small holding. So I don't imagine it was anything like the building today. But
yeah.
So that could be.
Yeah, it does sound. It's an interesting link, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
What do you think about the person that may have been present in the house, creating the footsteps, and what your mum used to smell as well, the tobacco smoke? Do you think it?
Well,
who do you think that was? Was there somebody else that used to live in that house at all? Do you know about the history?
We don't know anything about the history of the house, really. But apart from that there's been something on that site that's been recorded in the Doomsday Book. But I recently did a bit of research on hobs, so
place names
as well. So I thought this was absolutely amazing, and for all these years I thought that the footsteps were a ghost. However, I now think possibly it could have been something else, because rural farmhouses are said to have a
they're said to be attractive to certain types.
Well, you get brownies that meant to do your washing and tidying up for you while she's sleeping. You leave a bowl of milk out for them, etc. So that's an old folk tale, isn't it, about rural farmhouses?
In the old days, they would do your threshing. Do your threshing for you, and
So the name of the house is Hob Meadows Farm. And my mum, she used to say to us, "Oh, Hob, that means devil." So all throughout my childhood, my mum, she always said that. So I just thought
that's what she'd been told.
That's what she'd been told. So I thought devil, and it's only very recently, Jo, that I read about brownies that like to live in rural locations, farms, and they're called hobs.
They can be known as hobs.
Well, could it have been that what my mum heard in the barn, the grumbling, was a hob?
It could have been.
Well, I can add to that.
Oh, come on.
So I've looked at old maps for this building, and up to the year 1900. Prior to that, it was called Hobbs Meadow. And then in 1900, the name was changed to Hob Meadows.
Wow.
So it was called Hobbs Meadow.
Wow. So amazing. But I've heard a male voice in one of the sides of the house as well. It's only very quickly. It literally is like a There's nothing decipherable. You can't, there's no words or anything, but I've heard it. My mum's smelt the tobacco smoke in the kitchen, and she smelt it in the barn. Another thing which I think may or may not be something, but as a child, I can remember that I used to be obsessed. There was a cupboard under the stairs, the older part of the house, and I used to always have a longing to want to go into this cupboard under the stairs, as if it was the entrance to some underground world as well. I don't know why. I was about 6 or 7 years old. I don't know why I used to feel that way, but I remember I used to open it and try and get in this cupboard under the stairs, thinking that it was a passageway.
But actually, more interesting than that is on that staircase, if you remember, there's a recessed window that it doesn't have any glazing in, it's just an alcove, but with a timber beam above it.
Yes.
But in the centre of that timber beam, it's very old, it's obvious it's an old beam, but there's a carving in that beam that looks like a claw.
Yes.
So for years I was...
Oh, interesting. So like a witch mark?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, very interesting.
Very interesting.
Gosh, do you have a photo of it?
You actually do
have a photo of it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, I'd love to see that.
Yes, I'll share it with you. It's not the clearest of photos, but I'll happily send it across to you. So, I've looked into witch marks, and I've tried to, do a search to see if I can find anything similar, and I can't really, because it's just so. Yeah, it's just there doesn't witch marks. They've been like little symbols I've seen, but this is like an actual claw.
Yeah.
So like the length of so you've just got that one central line that must be about 6 inches long, and then sort of like 5 points that as in like 5 fingers or something. I don't know how to describe it, coming off the end of it.
It's like you'd see like a cave drawing of like a
broom or something. Yeah. Spread out broom.
And were there? See, I'm imagining in this lovely old house that you must have had quite an impressive hearth down there, a fireplace. Was there a space where the original fireplace was? Or?
Well, it had been altered a lot, so it wasn't. It's not the original one. So sadly,
there wasn't any impressive, massive inglenook fireplace or anything, was there? But there was a fireplace. But
well, it was brick built, so it had been altered probably in the 80s or something before we'd got there.
Yeah. And how about in the attic? Because that's another place. So hearths and attics are often places where
we didn't
marks
really
are found.
There was loft spaces. There was probably about 3 or 4, because obviously it's a large building with different sections. But to be honest, we never went in there.
No, there was lots of little nooks and crannies in this house, but we didn't go in the loft or anything. But the footsteps became such a regular occurrence that we just didn't bat an eyelid eventually.
But then it did get quieter in our teenage years, didn't it? Until that time when I was 18, and then you heard then we got a good send off 2 weeks.
Yeah, because we were leaving.
I'm sure that must be something to do with it.
That's interesting, isn't it? That you were leaving, and I wonder if that was some kind of we don't know at all. But I'm just wondering whether it was something nice that was happening. Maybe he was, sending you off with a blessing, or.
About that, but it's just the tone of the voice was so low, and it was monotone in the speaking as well.
Yeah,
like a monk's chant.
Yeah, I do love listening to those chants.
I don't know what Cistercian chants are like, but I know Gregorian music is beautiful to listen to, and it's relaxing and it's inviting, and there's it follows some sort of melody. The melody changes, but this was just one tone. It didn't pitch. So does that make sense?
Yeah. So we don't know for certain that where the house is the land that used to be owned and farmed by. But it was these monks. But it was.
But it's a pretty good guess, isn't it? I mean, with that bell tolling in the background, when there's no bells.
Yeah. If it's not on that exact patch of land, then it's a few fields away where it was. But the
area is so rich in folklore around there.
Yeah.
So I came across a book recently.
This section is available for all members of the Curious Crew who support me on Patreon. Join us there for this and more bonus content. Patreon.com/the Modern Fairy Sightings Podcast. Healing has helped me many times in my life when I'd reached a point where something needed to change. In 2005, I trained with Martin Brofman to learn the body mirror system of healing, which was life-changing for me. It's based on the idea that the parts of your body that don't work well reflect the parts of your life that don't work well, and about which you have tension in your consciousness. The understanding is that tension is stress and stress causes symptoms. In a distance healing or in-person session, I move up the chakras, returning each one to wholeness using a colour map. During the process, I see images and situations, I hear words or receive impressions that tell me something about what caused the tension in that person's life. The feedback at the end of the session is a really big part of the healing. If you're interested in a chakra healing session, you can contact me at scarletofthefae@gmail.com.
But I always assumed that those footsteps were a ghost. But now I'm thinking, was it something else? Was it a hob? Was it a hob? That's why the house is called.
There's actually another farm across the way called Hobbs Hole. So there's another farm with the same.
Another one, Hobbs Hole.
Right. Hob in it.
Yeah.
Did things go missing, or do you remember anything from childhood that was?
No, no. So you've got another story about that, though, haven't you?
I have,
about something going missing.
Yeah, but I just remember at Hob Meadows, and I thought that everybody felt like this. I just remember constantly feeling like I was being watched. Not the whole house, but particularly upstairs in my bedroom was next to the room where the footsteps were supposedly coming from.
As you put it so well, it wasn't until we moved out to a home without that kind of atmosphere that we realised that not all houses were like that.
Yes, so we're just assumed that that's how everybody felt. I mean, and as a child, I remember saying a couple of things to my mum as well when I was 6. So I think I've always been quite sensitive in that way. So I remember saying to my mum, and I don't know why I said this, but I said, life is a gift and a test. And we weren't a religious family. We didn't go to church or anything like that. But I just came out of this, and it was like a knowing that I had. And I had like a reoccurring dream of I was looking in the mirror, and the reflection I knew was me, but it was of a young man who was, about aged somewhere between 16 and 20. And I used to say to my mum, "Oh, I was a man in a past life, Mum." So these are all these things that were happening to me in this house when I was 6 or 7. The footsteps. So it was a magical place to grow up, wasn't it? And our mum used to read to us every evening the Magic Faraway Tree. We used to absolutely love
it.
And then in the summer, and then at the weekends, we used to just run down our little lane and go. We had our own little woods, didn't we? We used to go and look for fairies in the woods and go and look for fairies at the brook. We never saw anything. But they were possibly there all the time and we didn't realise. So Hob Meadows. So Kate and I still have a huge affection for that land, don't we? We just love. It's like a yearning to be there, isn't it? On that land, we quite often, if we can go for walks there and just be in that area. It really is just. It's got such a pull to it, hasn't it?
It sounds amazing. I love it. I mean, I grew up in a little rural valley from when I was about 12 anyway, 11 or 12. Oh, no, actually I think we moved there when I was 7, in fact, to one house. And I know what you mean, kind of just going out in the day and, going up, playing in the fields, making dens and just being surrounded by nature. And, it's just, you don't realise how lucky you were, do you?
We really didn't.
You just don't. And it's such a precious such a precious childhood to be able to have that freedom and that close connection with everything. And is this the same house that you had the incident with the raven or the crow
no, so
right.
Oh yes, my gosh, Jo, I hope you've got like 5 hours. So many stories. So the raven, so Kate and I, we were 15. Our granddad.
We'd lost our granddad.
Our father's dad had died, and because we lived in this rural house, the funeral was in the bigger town, and that was a good 15-20 minute car journey. Excuse me. So we'd stayed the night before the funeral in a house in the nearest town, and
stayed with a
family friend. We called her auntie. She wasn't really our auntie, but she was my mum's best friend.
She is. It's not bad.
Yeah. So, and it was a big Victorian house. It was 6 bedrooms. It was huge. Two 2 staircases. The morning of the funeral, so Kate and I came down the stairs, and as you get to the bottom of the stairs, it joins the end of a long corridor, and at the end of this corridor there is a room that you go into, and they used it as their main sitting room. So we automatically just opened this door in the morning of the funeral, just to turn the TV on for 10 minutes, just to wait for our dad to collect us. As we opened the door, on the back of the sofa was a humongous black bird, which
took us both by huge surprise. We
just stopped in our tracks, looked at this bird. It was just perched on the back of the sofa, minding its own business. Wasn't making any noise. It was just chillaxing.
It wasn't stressed out.
No. And then we looked at each other and we thought, no, shut the door. We just simply thought, we haven't got time to catch this bird and put it outside, and Dad's going to be here in 10 minutes. So off we went. We went to the funeral. And when a few hours later we got back, we said to our auntie, what did you do about the bird? How did you get the bird out? Because where this room was, for the bird to get in there, it would have had to have flown through the kitchen, opened the door to the long corridor, the other end, flown all the way down the corridor, opened and closed the doors behind it to the sitting room, and then, just made itself at home, whatever. But the windows in this sitting room were all covered in clear perspex, so they didn't open, and there was no chimney in this room. There was an electric fire, no chimney. So we fully expected to come back after the funeral and say to our auntie, how did you get the bird out? Expecting to hear some marvellous story about feathers and bird poo, etc. And she simply said, what bird? So Kate and I looked at each other. Yeah, we said, well, there was a huge, now we know it was a raven, it was huge. There was a huge blackbird in the sitting room this morning when we came downstairs. And she thought we were just, joking. She said, no, there's no bird there. So we went to look, didn't we?
We went to investigate if there was any devastation, as you would expect.
Not a feather.
Not a trace.
Nothing. Not a trace. But
gosh, it's real. Because you would have realised since the significance of that.
At the time we didn't, but years later we did. But the thing is, Jo, we were so used to strange happenings that we just took it in our stride, didn't we? So
they are known as psychopomps that will, take departed souls over, but they also bring messages from the other world as well. So there's this real deep connection with the other world, and with obviously people that have recently deceased. So that's lovely. Did you get eye contact with that bird?
Yeah, because it looked at us.
It did. It just sat there.
But, I was fully expecting it to start to freak out and try and fly into the windows.
But it didn't. It didn't.
Just sat there, looking at us, and we looked at it.
Yes.
And shut the door.
Oh, that's lovely.
I said, no, not today. But I have another story to tell you about that same road. So that road is called Spring Gardens. So I don't know, perhaps once upon a time there was a natural spring there or something. I don't know. But so it's a separate row of houses, but it's literally a stone's throw from.
It's along the same road.
So I was about the same age. I was I was 15 or 16 years old, and now what I'm going to tell you now, I only realised that this actually really happened to me through listening to your interview with Dr. Jack Hunter and his link between the seeing elementals whilst you're having psychedelics or DMT, or I don't know too much about it, but I've never even given it a second thought. But what happened to me was I was with her 2 sons and another one of their friends, so there was 4 of us, and we were in this house, and it belonged to another old relative that wasn't there. And this friend had brought with them a little bag of mushrooms. Now, this was my first introduction to and only ever introduction to mushrooms. But you know, being 15, 16, I was ready to go with the flow. So what they decided to do was they had this tiny, there must have been 5, 6, 7 mushrooms, and I don't know if that's a lot or not, I have no idea, but they boiled them up and they made 1 cup of coffee, and then the 4 of us shared this 1 cup of coffee, and that was that. And then we just had a nice time. We were just chatting. We were not, you know, nothing, didn't feel strange at all. You know, I was just I remember sitting in the front room waiting for nothing really, just relaxing, listening to my cousins, having a chat, etc., minding my own business. So I sat there on the sofa, and it was a lovely little 1930s terraced house. So it got lovely you've got these the stone fireplaces. They're shiny, you'll know what they're, and they kind of slant downwards. That was a typical like 1930s
or that era.
So I'm sat on this sofa, just minding my own business. The 4 of us, each had 2 sips of this coffee, and then we just sat in the lounge, just chatting and relaxing. All of us were really relaxed and having just a peaceful time. And I was just by myself, and I was listening to my cousin and his friend chatting, and I was sat on the sofa and facing the fireplace, which had got this beautiful so I just remember this shiny stone hearth, and then it got this the typical rug that you would get, the fireplace rugs with the floral patterns, and they this one was mainly red, and it got a few white bits on it, if you can picture it. So I'm sat there on this sofa, and out of the corner of my eye, on my right hand side, I saw movement on the floor by my feet, near to my feet, not directly on my feet, near to my feet. And I fully expected to look down and see a mouse, because living in the farmhouse that we lived in, there was lots of them, and they were adorable. They climb up the curtains and they go through the holes in the beams, etc. But I looked down at this movement, and I saw a procession of tiny little, the only way I can describe them is gnomes, because they had hats on, and they came from underneath the sofa, and I watched them. They came running from underneath the sofa, and they were so quick. They were scurrying like a mouse speed. They were so quick, and they ran all the way to the edge of this rug. And I noticed that they were careful to stick to the darker parts of the rug. Perhaps they were, to try and not be seen. There was a definite leader, and the leader, they got to the end of this rug, and they didn't make any sound, but this leader stopped, pointed to an area of the rug, and then the first gnome, or little man, as I said to my cousins afterwards, "Did you see the men?" And they said no. But the first gnome jumped into the rug, and one by one they followed. Like it was like watching lemmings. They just jumped into the same part of the rug until there was about, I'd say there was about 7, 8 or 9 of them, until the last one jumped in, and then the leader jumped in, and then that was it. And I thoroughly enjoyed watching them. They were almost quite comical, almost kind of bashing into each other, and when it had finished, I was smiling, and I just really enjoyed it. And I just turned to my cousin and his friend, and I said, "Oh, did you see the little men?" And they said, stopped their conversation, because they were engrossed in a conversation, looked at me, said no, and then they carried on. So, and that was that. And I just shrugged my shoulders and carried on just sitting there and just, relaxing and just listening to the conversation of my cousin. And that happened when I was 15. And it was only, I think it was last year, when I was listening to your podcast about people that see things when they take magic mushrooms or things like that, and I had literally stopped what I was doing. I was in my cabin. I was making some flower craft things that I enjoy doing. I literally put everything down, and I just said out loud to myself, "Oh my God, I actually saw them." I couldn't believe it. So I phoned Kate straight away, and I said, Kate, remember when I was 15 and I told you I saw those little men running across the carpet, you said,
Which I said no.
and then afterwards you did, didn't you? It's like 25 years ago. And you said, oh, yes.
I do.
Yeah. I said, well, it was real, Kate. I can't believe it. So, yeah. So there we go. So for all these years, I just assumed that it was my brain playing tricks on me. Didn't think for a second that they were actually there. But what's interesting about it is that the movement caught my eye, you see. So that's what made me look down, because I saw them running as fast as they could. Did you ever watch The Borrowers? That was that program in the 90s.
Oh, yes.
It was like that, honestly. But their clothes were all the same. But they weren't exactly the same, if you know what I mean. One might be a bit fatter or but they were, all very similar, but they were all kind of running as fast as they could, and just to try, they were carefully sticking to the dark parts of the rug, and then they just ran out from under the sofa and just stopped and just disappeared into the floor. That's the only way I can describe it.
I love it. I love that image. Can you remember much about what they were wearing? I know you said, I think, did you mention, because you sent me a picture of some little figurines that you kind of tried to recreate that picture. What were their clothes like?
They I can't remember the details. I know that they had boots, I know that they had a belt, and I know that they each had a hat. So, and the colour was, they were almost camouflaged, but not quite. So I'd say it was a very dark red maroon type colour that they were wearing. It was dark, but not so dark that they blended. They didn't blend into the carpet, which is, I guess, why they were trying to stick to the red parts. But
because the carpet, the rug itself was maroon red. Yeah.
Yes, with the odd white bits. Yeah, the typical fireplace rug that you get.
And what was it about the patch that they jumped into? Where was it, and what was it? Was it a part of the pattern, or was it a corner, or?
It was on the corner, but it wasn't the exact corner. It was just off the corner. So the leader would stand with his back to the corner of the carpet, and then he literally pointed to an area just in front of him. So it was at the edge of the carpet near the corner. But it was a dark area, because I remember they were sticking, because I remember thinking at the time, oh wow, that's my brain has invented that these little men are, and how funny that they're sticking to the dark area of the carpet as well.
Did they make any noise?
They didn't make any noise. There was not a sound, not at all.
And do you think they noticed you? Did the leader notice you, or
they didn't? I don't think they did. They didn't. No. I'm pretty certain of that. They didn't acknowledge me. They didn't know that I was watching them. They didn't look at me. Not at all. So, but I don't know. They must. Maybe they did see me, but they would have seen. They would have seen my feet together at the edge of the sofa, and they ran past the right side of me from under the sofa, and they just ran so quickly. They, like I said, because I thought I was fully expecting to see a mouse because of the speed of the movement as well. So it was over in seconds, and they'd just gone. But they were so comical to watch. They were.
Yeah. Do you think they ran at speed and acted like they were panicked in case somebody would see them?
Yes, I do. I think they were running like, the borrowers would run to try and not be seen. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, it is very like the story that Jack Hunter tells, and also Neil Rushton. He also saw some gnomes in a similar vein. I'm just wondering if I'm with one of them, that it was on a chest of drawers that the gnomes were moving around on, in formation like that as well. They were kind of in formation, and I think that was Jack Hunter.
Yeah, I think you're right, because I think that's what made me think, oh my gosh, I really saw them.
Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah, but for all of these years, I just assumed that it was something that my brain had made up. Didn't think for a moment that they were actually there.
Yeah.
So
that's great. And just more recently, you'd had some activity go on in your craft room as well. So
so my cabin, Jo. So I'm really lucky. I've got a she shed at the bottom of my garden, and in this cabin I've got thousands of crystals, because I like to make crystal fairy gardens and wands and things like that. So I'm really lucky. I've got this space. It's full of all of my, it's like my, like your teenage room where you've got your own posters and things. It's a bit like that. It's a self-indulgent room, really.
great.
Yes, my little retreat, crystal retreat. But because I am sensitive, every now and again I do know when I'm being watched. I can tell. So there was one, this was I think it was a couple of months ago, there was one evening, I say it was about 6 o'clock. I was in my cabin, just what was I doing? I was probably wire wrapping a crystal or something, and I just got the sense that there was somebody there with me. I didn't hear anything, but I just knew. So I said out loud, "Not today, thank you. Not interested. Please leave." And that was that. And shortly after that, I locked up for the night, went inside, put the kids to bed, etc. And then about 10:30 at night, I decided to log on. We've got ring cameras. We've got a ring camera in the cabin. There's some outside the house, etc. So it's not uncommon for me. I don't do it every evening, but once or twice a week I'll log on to my ring camera in the cabin just to see if I can see anything, or there's a lot of orbs that get picked up in my house in the lounge. I live in a 1930s house, and it's quite often for me to have orbs around me, and I can see them on the ring camera. So every now and again I log on to the cabin ring camera just to see if I can see anything, and 99.9% of the time I don't see anything. I've seen the odd orb, one lonely orb I've seen, but the same evening where I sensed that somebody had joined me in the cabin and I politely asked them to leave, I so 10:30 at night I logged on, and there was this really strange light, which was just slowly bumbling around in above the table. So there's a table in the center of the cabin, and it was hovering just ever so just about how much is that, about
probably a metre and a half.
Yeah, a metre and a half, hovering over this table. And I thought, oh, that's, what on earth is that? Because the camera's the cabin's in pitch black, so the ring camera is infrared, so it's complete. There's no light source in that cabin whatsoever. The garden, it's quite a private garden as well, so there's no street lights. There's nothing. The blinds were down as well, so over all the windows. So I watched this shape. It was almost like a bumblebee shape to begin with. And I watched it just moving around. It was kind of not doing a figure of eight, but it was kind of moving, up and down, round, and then back again, etc. Not a repetitive way, but it was moving. And behind it as well, there seemed to be like another light which was kind of following it, and this other light was on the furthest wall of the cabin, the back wall. So they were kind of flying together in unison. So you've got this like bumblebee shaped white blobby light, and then behind on the back wall you've got this glitter trail. Is the only thing I can think to describe of what it looked like. So they were both moving together in unison, but they were quite separated in distance. But I carried on watching this light, and then the glitter trail kind of disappeared, and then the light that was hovering above the table got smaller and smaller, and it slightly moved location, so it moved like further down to the left, and then this light started to have its own glitter trail. And I was just watching this light, and I couldn't understand why it was reducing in size every 5 minutes. I mean, the whole thing lasted for about half an hour. and then it completely disappeared. I watched it the whole time, I've still got the recording as well. And it just got smaller and smaller. And it had its own glitter trail, and I noticed as we had a camp bed in there, and I noticed as it flew over that mattress, it cast a shadow. And that made me think, well, how on earth can it cast a shadow? There's no light source in there unless it's got its own light source. But it always appeared white, creamy white in colour on the camera, but it's an infrared camera. But anyway, and it just got smaller and smaller and smaller, and then it just completely disappeared. And the next day, I was in bed at the time when I was watching it, and I thought, I'm not going to get out of bed and go all the way downstairs, all the way across the garden, open the cabin and see what it is. I'll have a look tomorrow. So, I went in the morning and investigated the area, thought, was it, something that had been dangling down off the beams, or I couldn't find anything. There was absolutely nothing there. But if you watch it, it kind of, the way that it moves as it gets smaller and smaller, and it's got this glitter trail, it looks like it's investigating things that are on the table.
It does. I mean, you sent it to me, and that it really does. It's quite interested in what's on that table.
Yeah.
So what was on the table?
So on the table there was just my crafty bits and bobs that I have. So there was a box on there that just contained sellotape, scissors. There was a few bits of paper. There was the odd crystal was on there. There was interestingly, there was a fairy door on there. So just a wooden fairy door that I'd purchased, and I was in the process of putting my own spark on it and covering it in crystals and flowers and things that I like to do. It's a hobby of mine. So there was just that on the table. There was nothing. That was it, really.
Have you finished that door yet?
No, I haven't. I wish I had.
What are you going to do with it? Because I think that's it seems like quite a potent door. It's already being talked about, and you should think carefully about what you're going to do with that door.
Well, I might put it on my in the garden. I also have a laburnum tree, who I refer to as he. I absolutely adore him, and he's covered in my he's got a pentagram star on there. He's got a fairy door on there already. I've got some little plastic gnomes that I got from a holiday park in Cornwall. They're in there, and I've got wind chimes on there. So I absolutely adore this tree. He's got fairy lights on him. He's loved. So I think I might put the fairy door on there somewhere. There's already one fairy door on there, but perhaps put another one. Perhaps put that on there. It's fun when I get around to finishing it.
Yeah, you'll have to. I mean, that's a great place to meditate then. Come spring and summer, and who knows? Because they're certainly interested. Did you have an idea of what you were going to do with that door beforehand, or was it just?
No, no. To be honest with you, I hadn't. It was one I'd started it, but I was nowhere near completing it. I've got lots of things that I've started in there that that I need to, like lots of people, start lots of things and then go on and do something else and then go back to it. So
it's a creative projects. What had you put on the door so far? What did you done that day?
I'd painted it, and I'd put some. You can buy some fake moss, so it got all this moss at the bottom, and it got a little ladybird on it. And that was it, really. I've got crystals in mind for it that I'm going to put on the door eventually. But it's far from completed. It's much at the beginnings.
Well, it would be lovely to link to your shop as well. Is it both of you that produce items for that shop then, or
just me?
Do you do that, Kate, as well? Yeah. And it would, be really nice to share a link with that, because there's some, if you want to, we don't have to, but because obviously that would, it wouldn't be anonymous anymore, of course. But but you've got some lovely pieces.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah, well, you obviously take a lot of care in what you do as well, and it means a lot to you. So, I mean, that's if people are going to buy crystals, then I would want to certainly buy my crystals from someone who, had that kind of resonance.
Oh, thank you so much. I tend to give away quite a few crystals as well.
I have a lot.
I meet people, especially to my twin. I meet lots of people, and I always get a sense of, think, oh, this person needs this crystal, so I tend to give a lot of them away as well. So, but yeah, I'm so lucky that I have that space, because I can just pop in there and I can create things, and
you're often not alone.
Yes,
Did you tell Jo about the other things that have happened to you?
No, not yet. Yeah. So throughout my life, I've always had things that have happened to me, which some people would think were a bit supernatural or strange, but to me, it's just completely normal. The light in the cabin, I just thought to myself, oh, I can't really be bothered to go and investigate it. Because it's just another thing that's happened to me. But I have got some kind of connection with jewellery, and I have had 2-3 pieces of jewellery that I've lost, and they've been returned to me, which is pretty amazing, really. I'll tell you about those. And the other incredible story with my connection with jewellery is the story that I sent to you. That's now it's just been made into a podcast for BBC Sounds. So this I have this connection with jewellery, and I guess the first thing that ever happened to me was I was 18 years old, and we were living in the house that we'd moved to after Hobmeadows, and it was a lovely stone cottage in a village, and I had this beautiful necklace that I absolutely loved. I saw it in the shop, and when you see something and you think, oh, I have to have that. So it was like one of those. And this necklace, is it cubic zirconia or cubic zirconia? It's it's glass, but they're meant to look like diamonds, and they were shaped into a cross, and I just absolutely loved it, and just thought, oh, I've seen this necklace, I have to have it. So I had it for a couple of years. I wore it every day, and I do remember that this one particular day I was running late to leave the house, and I grabbed my necklace. I thought, I'll put it on when I get to work. I'll pop it in my bag for now, and I'll put it on when I get there. And there was a voice in the back of my head that said, make sure that you zip up the side compartment where you've just put the necklace, but I ignored it. So anyway, got to work, completely forgot that I'd put my necklace in the side pocket of my bag. And then I remembered it 2-3 days later. So I thought, oh my gosh, my bag, as you do, you took it in the back of your car, it tips over, etc. I thought, oh my gosh, my necklace. So put my hand in the side pocket of the bag, and it wasn't there. Emptied my bag out and looked in the car, searched for it, and I was absolutely devastated that I'd lost it. And it was my own fault. I'd been careless. So I accepted it, and I felt really sad about it, but that was that, and it was perhaps 2-3 weeks later, I was in the cottage on my own. So it's my mother's. I still lived with my mum at this point, but I was in the cottage by myself, and I was in the front room, and I was stood there just thinking about something. Can't remember what it was. And my cat Poppy, bless her, she was there as well, and she was sat on the windowsill. And I just stood there, and the next minute I hear the sound of something dropping onto the windowsill. So I immediately look, and right next to my cat Poppy is my necklace. And I was amazed, but I wasn't amazed. But I was thrilled that it was there. Now, this necklace, I'd searched for it everywhere. It'd been gone. It'd been missing for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Where it had landed on the windowsill, there was absolutely nothing for it to have got stuck on. It literally dropped out of thin air. And I remember looking at Poppy, and she just looked at my necklace, and looked at me as I picked it up, and I just said to the universe, "Oh, thank you," and popped it back on, and that was that. So that was the first piece of jewellery that got returned to me.
Was that in that old house that you were talking about earlier?
That wasn't in Hov Meadows. That was in the next house that we moved to after Hov Meadows. So not long after. I mean, we moved out of Hov Meadows when I was 18, and I was about 18 when I lost this necklace. But yes, it literally dropped out of thin air. The curtain was opened. There was only one curtain, and it was far on the other side of the window. Couldn't have been. There was nothing for it to have been stuck on. Just literally dropped out of thin air next to the cat. I mean, the cat wasn't keeping it for 2 weeks, that's for sure. She wasn't wearing it, but
yeah.
So that was that. And the next time that happened to me was years and years and years later. So in the house that I live in now. So now I live in a seaside town on the southeast coast, and I'd just put together this necklace. So this was, I would say, 5 years ago. I'd put together this necklace of various charms. So it got a tree of life charm, a pentagram charm, and it got a crystal on it. And I just, got these bits and bobs, put them together, and I loved it. It wasn't expensive or anything. That it was just something that I'd created, and I loved it. And it fell off my neck. So I remember doing the school run, and I got back from the school, and it had gone. And I know that I was wearing this necklace as I was on the pavement outside of my house, getting my children in the car. I know I was wearing this necklace, and it's 3 to 5 minute drive to their school. So I realised it had gone. So I said, "Oh no, please, universe, please help me find it, please." I was so upset that I'd lost it. So I got back in the car, retraced my footsteps, parked where I'd parked, looked, all the way up the hill walked to the school, searched everywhere, couldn't find it. Looked in the car. And as I was driving back, I was really sad, and I said, "Please, universe, please help me find this necklace." Got back to my house, got out the car, and there it was, in between it was on the road right next to the pavement, so tucked right at the edge. If it had been there when I'd gone to search for it, I would have driven over it, guaranteed, and I would have destroyed it. So so that's that. Right. And then the next story, I found the most absolutely amazing story. This happened to my husband. This is my husband's wedding ring. This story, this really wowed me. So this was about 5 years ago. My husband said to me one day, "Have you seen my wedding ring?" I said, "Oh no, I haven't." He said, "Well, I don't understand it. I put it down, and because he always takes his ring and his watch off and puts them on his drawers in our bedroom, and it's I've looked for it, and it's just not there." So over the next few days, we tried to find it. We looked under the drawers. We looked everywhere that you could possibly think of. We turned the house upside down. So this searching turned into 2.5 years of searching for this ring. It disappeared. It got to the point where we cut the bottom of the sofa open to see if it had gone into the sofa. This ring had just vanished. So 2.5 years later, we'd stopped searching for it, and I said to my husband one day, "Oh, did you ever find your wedding ring? Did you have you looked for it recently?" And he said no. So he was really sad about it. I was really sad about it, and we couldn't understand where it was. So, but in my mind, I said, "Universe, I know it's a big ask, but please, can you help me find my husband's wedding ring?" So at this point, we were in lockdown. So in lockdown, we used the time to help our children to learn to ride their bikes. So what we did is on this day, I literally said in my mind to the universe, "Please help me find my husband's ring." And then I forgot about it. Didn't really expect anything to happen at all. So we got, I said, "Please help me." And then we went on the bike ride. So the bikes were, so you go to the bottom of the garden, you get the bikes out of the shed, and then you have to wheel the bikes over the lawn, up the steps, along the side of the house, which is decking boards. So over the decking boards, then you open the back gate, and then you wheel, you carry on wheeling them down the drive, and then you're onto the road. So all four of us went to the church around the corner, like 2-minute walk, because it had a nice big empty car park, and that's where we helped our children to practice learning to ride their bikes in lockdown. That's what we did most of the time. So off we went. We were gone for a couple of hours, and then it was time to go home. So we went home. Each of us has got their own bike. So I went first. We wheeled the bike up the drive, opened the back gate, and then 2 steps from the back gate, you're onto the decking boards. But I opened the back gate, and in the centre of the second decking board was my husband's wedding ring.
Great,
and,
yeah.
2 hours earlier, we'd all wheeled our bikes over the decking, So if that ring had been there for 2.5 years, we would have seen it. We use that decking every day. The gaps in between the decking boards were wider than the width of the ring, so the ring could have easily slipped down underneath the decking. The ring was immaculate, shiny as the day that he lost it, the day before. So I just stopped, kind of smiled to myself a little bit. In my head, I said, "Thank you, universe." Picked the ring up, but at this point my children and my husband have caught me up, and they're waiting for me to go through the gate with the bikes, etc., so we can put the bikes back. But I picked the ring up, turned around to my husband, and I said, "I found your wedding ring." And his face was just, you can imagine,
Yeah.
I said, "What?" I said, "Yeah, here it is." And he just stared at me with his mouth open, and I said, "Say thank you," like to the universe. So he just said, "Thank you." And that was it. And then we wheeled the bikes back over the decking, over the lawn, back into the shed, and that was that. And
that's great.
We went into the house, and he was just speechless. And he said, "How?" And I said, "Just don't question it. Just say thank you." I asked for it to be returned, and it was. Joe, not in a million years did I ever think that we would ever see his ring ever again. But I'm over the course of my life, I've had so many things like that happen to me that I'm just so used to it, really.
And it sounds like you trust that method as well of calling to the universe to employ their help in a situation.
Yes.
I do need to do the same thing, because I've lost my wedding ring, and it's been lost for quite a while now.
Oh, wow.
So I need to
come round. I'll have a look.
Could you? Can I set you on that case? I'm just wondering, with all these amazing stories, whether it's kind of in your family. Did your mum and how about, what do you know about your grandparents? What do you know about your family history? Don't show anything personal, obviously, but are there some skills coming down the line?
Oh, absolutely. My auntie Jill, she calls me ghost bait, actually, because things always happen to me, always, more so than anybody else, but they do happen to the women in our family. And also my granddad, bless him, he definitely had a gift. He didn't use it, he didn't talk about it, but it's a knowing, and my mum agrees with me, and my aunties as well. His mum was she used to dabble in a bit of not so much witchcraft, but just like a wise woman kind of.
She used to read tea leaves.
She used to read tea leaves, and she used to, if somebody upset her, she used to curse them by muttering something under their breath, and then throwing salt into the fire. That's what she used to do. So, but my granddad didn't do anything, but I know that he had a gift. And then for me, I have had some incredible experiences. So very quickly, I've in the village of the next village that we moved to after we left Hob Meadows, 2 things that happened to me in this pub. First one, very quickly, is that I was somewhere between 18 to 20 years old, and I was in this pub and I was playing pool and just having a nice time, and there was a couple of women in there. I think it was a mother and a daughter, and we lived very close to a big theme park, so they were going to Alton Towers.
Oh yeah.
So we were used to having lots of people, tourists come and go, but that was our local. And I think Kate and I both worked behind the bar there a few times as well. But I was just playing pool, just minding my own business, and then for some reason I just came out with, "Who's Susan?" And I said it to this lady. She was a stranger. I'd never said anything to her. And I just went up to her and I said, "Who's Susan?" And as soon as I said it, I kind of covered my mouth and I thought, why on earth did you say that? That's just bonkers. But she looked at me and she said, "Go on." And then, Joe, there's just the strangest thing happened to me. Now know it's my third eye. But at the time I didn't know what it was. But as soon as she said "go on," it's like she gave authorization for Susan, who I found out was a relative of hers, a deceased one, to use me as some kind of medium. Now, I'm not a medium. I'm psychic, absolutely, but I'm not a medium. But as soon as she said "go on," I saw. The lady said to me, "What relation is Susan to me?" So then I saw this white background in my mind. So if I said to you, it's a bit like this. If I said to you, "Joe, think about a red phone box," you can now see one in your mind. So it's kind of like that. So I saw this white background and lots of black lines, lots and lots on the left side. And then the lines there was a vertical line to separate them, and then I knew there was another side, and there was only a few lines on the other side, like 5 or 6. And I said, "I don't know what relation she is to you. All I can tell you is I know that she's on the smaller side, that she belongs with all these lines." And I didn't realize that these lines represented a family tree. I didn't realize that at the time. And she said, "That's right, she was my stepmother." And then she said, so that's why she was on the smaller lines, because she wasn't a blood relative, you see. And then she said to me, "Is she happy?" And as soon as she said that, I had the most incredible, overwhelming feeling of happiness in my, you get butterflies.
Yeah.
Right there. And it was I've never experienced any kind of feeling like that in my life since, even when my children were born, even when I got married. It was just the most overwhelming feeling of joy that it was immense, and it only lasted for 2 or 3 seconds. This lady started to cry as well, and I felt terrible because I thought, "Oh my gosh, this stranger, I've made her cry." But so that was one thing that happened to me in this pub. Another thing that happened to me in this pub, which was really terrifying, is this one particular evening, Kate was working behind the bar. Kate had invited her psychic friend to come and see if he could make contact. There was meant to be a ghost of a drayman, which is like a cellarman. The drayman would bring the barrels of beer. There's meant to be this ghost that people had seen in this pub. It was a very old 17th century coaching inn pub, if you can picture, something like that. Yeah. And so it was like a Tuesday, Wednesday. It was really quiet. 11 p.m. at night, the doors had been locked. There was only 4 of us in the pub. Kate was tidying, putting the remaining glasses in the dishwasher. And Paul, we'd planned this. Paul said he was going to come and see if he could make contact with the drayman. So there was 4 of us. There was Kate, myself, our friend Laura, and Paul. And we sat in the same room, the pool room, the same as in the snooker pool. Sorry, not Paul. It's my accent. Yeah. The same room where I'd said to this lady, "Who's Susan?" But we sat in this room, and I can remember Paul saying, we invite you to come and talk to us. Come, let us know that you're here. We invite you, the spirit of the drayman, to come and make contact with us." So we sat there in silence for 10-15 minutes. Nothing happened. I was looking for maybe the curtain to move or a beer mat to flip or something. Nothing not a sausage, nothing happened. So he gave up. So he carried on talking to Kate. Kate was loading the dishwasher behind the bar, and I was sat next to Laura in that room. Now, just behind that room, there's a corridor that runs behind the bar, and it takes you into another room at the other side of the bar, like a bigger room for the pub. But as I'm sat talking to Laura, for no reason whatsoever, I get a flash of the image of that corridor in my mind, and I just thought, oh, that's weird. And I knew there was some body at the end of that corridor, but I didn't think anything of it. I just thought that it was just a thought that popped into my head, and I ignored it. And I carried on talking to Laura, and I remember Laura was talking to me. She was saying, oh, tomorrow my plans are I'm going to go to the shops and I want to buy this, blah, blah, blah. And as she's talking to me, I become aware of pins and needles in my because I'm sat down on this long leather bench. We're sat next to each other, and I become aware of these pins and needles that start from my knees, and they start, these pins and needles, both my legs, and this sensation starts creeping up. And I remember turning to Laura and I said, oh, Laura, I've got pins and needles in my legs. It's really odd. And I remember shaking my legs and punching them, and rubbing them, not punching them, trying to get rid of the pins and needles. And this sensation kept creeping up, and it was slow, but it kept going, and it got to my stomach. And I remember saying to Laura, oh, that's really weird, Laura, this pins and needles is in my stomach now. And then this sensation just kept creeping up and up my body, and it got to my chest, and it got to my throat. And as it got to my throat, it felt like there was hands around my throat, and I realised that I couldn't breathe. And I remember saying to Laura, oh, Laura, I can't breathe. And at that point, Paul, who'd had his back to me the entire time because he was leaning through, there was a hatch, he was leaning through the hatch to talk to Kate. At that point, he just happened to turn around. I wasn't making any fuss or anything. He just happened to turn around, and he looked at me, and then he just said, get her out, get her out. So at that point, I thought, well, that's a bit dramatic, but okay. So I tried to stand up, and I couldn't. So I remember Laura and Paul helping me to stand up, and as they did, I could hear this sobbing that was coming out of my mouth, but it wasn't me, because my brain is still, I still had my mind like I do, now when I'm talking to you, but I could hear this noise coming out of my mouth, and I could not move. So it was really strange. It was like I was me. I had my conscious mind, but I couldn't move my body.
Yeah.
So they had to help me to get out of the pub. And then as I started to walk, aware of this absolute bereft sobbing, it was a woman's voice coming out of my mouth. Then I started to feel the distress, and it was the most horrendous emotional pain ever. Honestly, it was like you'd seen your whole family slaughtered in front of you or something. It was just awful. So, I mean, again, it was a very short walk to the back door. As soon as they opened the back door to the car park, as soon as I stepped through the threshold, it was like that, and whatever it was on me immediately had gone. So then I was stood in the car park, and then I thought, what on earth was that? And that's when I began to get frightened. And then, I left the pub, and that was that. And the landlady of that pub, she was not very well at the time. So that's why Kate was locking up. Kate had the keys, etc. So, but the next day she came back from hospital, and she said to Kate, whilst I was away, did you have anybody to stay in the guest rooms? So it had 3 guest bedrooms. They did bed and breakfast, but that wasn't operating because she'd been ill. So Kate said, no, not at all. Why do you ask? And one of the guest rooms, the bed had got on either side imprints of like somebody sat down. So on the edge. I mean, nobody had been in these bedrooms, but if you can imagine, they were on the left side, and then the right side, they were mirroring each other, the imprints of somebody sat on either side of the bed. So I remember Kate asked Paul about that, and Paul, the only thing that Paul could think of is that when we'd said, we're ready for you to come and talk to us now, we invite you to come and talk to us, we'd invited another spirit or something something that was in that pub that we didn't know about, to come and you know, talk to us. And because this is why my Auntie Jill calls me ghost bait, you see, this thing always happened to me. So I must have been the one that was open with the big flashing neon lights, come and use my body as a vessel, you know. So that's what he thinks happened. So and the terrifying thing is that after that, Kate couldn't work the bar for a few times, and I had to do it in her place. And I tell you, I was petrified having to switch all the lights off and lock that door on my own after that. But
that is scary. That's scary. Yeah. Did you ever do any research then to see whether that place comes up in any old newspapers or anything?
Oh, let me ask Kate. That's a question for Kate. Did you?
I actually haven't.
No.
I'll put it on my list.
Yeah, put that one on the list. By the time you find that one, something else will have happened.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh,
blimey. Yeah, it's so interesting. It's definitely, whatever it is, it seems to be running in the family, I think.
Oh, absolutely. But you know, so our mother, that's why when she saw those lights in the laburnum tree at Hob Meadows, that's why when she, you know, she said, I looked at them and I thought they were fireflies, and then I realised we don't have fireflies in this country, so I continued to watch them. Then I realised that they were supernatural, and then I thought, nope, not today. And I carried on putting the pony and the donkey in the stable and went in the house, you know.
I mean, this is it, because I think, you know, in days gone by, in ye oldie days, you know, it's just part and parcel of life, really, isn't it? Yeah. There is going to be, you know, something in the pub or something in the barn, and these happenings around where you live, in the trees and in our homes. I think it's just a kind of, it was a normal acceptance. And I think if you're used to that, and if say you know, you're used to living in countryside as well, away from the cities, and you're just kind of used to that being just quite normal, then it doesn't really surprise you. And like you say, you can get into it sounds like your mum at some point has passed on that method of just saying, hello, you're here, look, but I haven't got time for this today, or you know, I need to just crack on with what I'm doing.
She's very much like that. She's, you know, she always she doesn't want to entertain them at all. You know, if a spirit happens to make itself aware to her, she always says, nope, not today, nope, go away, thank you, doesn't she? Yeah.
Has she ever had, or had you ever had times where you've said, oh, okay, hello, who are you, what do you want?
Like a communication.
Do you ever sort of say the opposite? Do you ever sort of welcome it and say, oh, hello, who's this?
I do welcome, actually, in my cabin. I do welcome, because
it's not just your cabin though, is it? Your house is actually well.
Yeah, we have a visitation in my house.
So much stuff happens in your house.
It's me, I think. Yeah.
I think we need another chat.
Yeah.
We need a part 2.
Maybe, yeah.
Little mini series.
One thing that I realised, just briefly going back to my husband's wedding ring, one thing I did realise that happened around the same time is that, and I think it happened just before his ring went missing, is I woke up at 3 a.m. as you're wide awake at 3 a.m. It's a regular thing, and you don't know why you're wide awake, but you're not sleepy, you are, you know, completely wide awake. So this happened to me, and I happened to look at the foot of my bed, built into the wall, is some shelving, which is it's an original part of the house, 1930s house, but these shelves go quite far back, so the windows, any light coming through the windows doesn't penetrate, doesn't touch this shelf. But anyway, so I woke up, looked at the foot of the bed, looked at the shelves, and there was this bright red light hovering on the top of this shelf, the top shelf. There's nothing electrical on there. There was nothing on there that I don't have anything in the house that would make a, you know, red light either. But there was this red light, and I just thought to myself, it's 3 a.m. I'm not going to get out and investigate. No, I'll just leave that. So I just went back to sleep. But it was about the size of half of my small fingernail. It was about that size, and it was just a circular red light that was just kind of hovering just above the top shelf. So I wondered, because I'm sure I read somewhere that you can see fairies sometimes appear as red lights. I'm sure I've read it somewhere.
Yeah, I do believe that. I feel, with orbs and these little red lights, they are, I mean, I see them all the time. I saw one yesterday next to a family member, and that was a purple one. They're either part of that person's consciousness, or if they are faffing about the bedroom as yours was there, then that is another being. Now, it could be someone in spirit, but it can also be, it's basically energy manifest.
Yes.
So sometimes what happens is also you might see the actual being, you might see the fairy or the spirit, and somebody else would just see the light, the little orb energy manifest.
Right.
Because it's like there's different layers to it, if you like. And if you're very, very open at a particular time, you might actually see the being, or an aspect of that being.
Yeah.
But if you are aware on another level, then you might just see the energy of that being. So, and it's the same when it's around a person. It's usually thought forms. So they have an idea about something. So I usually see it around people when they are really excited about something and they're telling you about something, and you see these pings, and it could be right next to them, or it can be above their head, it can be up to the left, it can be up to the right, but it's like it's in their energy, in their aura somewhere, and it relates to something that they either really care a lot about, or something that's really truthful, something that means a lot to them. It's their truth, their personal truth about something. So, but if, as you say, they're just in the bedroom like that, then it could well have been.
Well, I wondered, because fairies have got a reputation for being fond of shiny jewellery, right? So I wondered, perhaps that may have been something to do with why my husband's wedding ring went missing.
Yeah. And you're they're bringing it back as well. I mean, people do say this, don't they? That things go missing and then they are returned.
Yeah.
My daughter's hairbrush is missing at the moment, and I have asked the fairies to return that brush, and I think I'm going to have to ask them again because it still hasn't turned up.
Yeah.
Plus my wedding ring. So
this is it. So I'm wondering whether fairies, elementals have been around me my whole life, and I have not realised, because of the hub meadows, the grumbling in the barn, the footsteps, the little gnomes that I saw, and then the jewellery that gets returned. The jewellery.
It definitely does seem that you and your sister have a very strong connection to the other world, and it's always been around you, and it's nice. It feels that's a normal thing, I think. I don't know what you think.
Oh,
it's a huge part of our lives, isn't it?
Absolutely. So we've always felt it, and we just assumed that everybody else did, and then as we got older we realised that people people don't have the same kind of they don't. So for me, I can always feel energy in my in my solar plexus, around that area, and just I've always had these knowings about things. And it was our birthday a couple of days ago, and I bought Kate some copper dowsing rods, because it's just a thing that we've both been interested in doing, but we've never really got round to doing it. So we took them out for their first ever spin a couple of days ago, and by the time that we'd finished, we realised that we could actually feel the energy just by walking through it. And for years we thought that we were just, having high blood pressure or something. We were just going a bit dizzy for a moment, but no, we realised that we can actually feel the energy lines. So because just around the corner from where Kate lives is a bowl barrow, so we went. That's why we took the copper rods for their first outing and found all of the energy lines that lead up to this bowl barrow.
One of many.
Oh, that's fantastic. And it's so nice that you can share that together as well as sisters. You've always been with each other from the very beginning, and you're able to have that closeness as well and to share these interests. It's so precious. It's really great. I think you need to look into your ancestry. Do you have any Irish ancestry?
We do.
I knew it.
Yeah. We do. But we're not able to look into that because our biological father, our dad, he's adopted. So that's the end of that, really. But we do know that there is Irish ancestry. Yes.
Wouldn't it be wonderful if there was any way of knowing? Thought there must be some Irish ancestry in there, but
Kate and I can both sing actually quite well as well, so we put that down to our Irish roots.
Irish roots. And also, when I was about 13, I suddenly developed a real interest in Irish music. Do they call it music?
It's in the blood.
It's in the blood.
Yeah. It's in the blood.
I was obsessed with the cause, and I got a tin whistle. And I taught myself every little tin whistle part that Andrea Cole played, and then I got a barring, and I learned how to play the barring and I just loved it. I was just so obsessed with it.
Yeah,
it just came out of nowhere.
That's really cool. It's hard to play the barring. I've got one, and I haven't mastered it.
No, I had one, and then Gemma's taken it now for her cabin, unfortunately.
Yes, trying to drum up.
She said, "Can I just borrow this for a little bit?" Yeah, right. Make sure you bring it back though, which is quite a distance from East Sussex to Staffordshire. But
the fairies are in there having a ceilidh with it.
Joe, I never thought about that, but the Irish connection, the fairies as well.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you. There's so much here. And did you say that your granddad was a jeweller?
Yeah, so our granddad was he owned the jeweller shop, and my pet, when we were little, we used to have to go there after school, didn't we?
That was also granted.
And were his parents jewellers?
I don't know.
Think so.
I don't know where he learnt it from. Maybe the fairies were enjoying the jewellery in the shop, and that's where you picked up that vibe. I don't know.
Maybe, I don't know. But that was really haunted as well, that shop. So that was like that was a 17th century building, poor me and Kate, so we used to sense spirit watching us all the time. So we'd have to go to this shop after school and sit there terrified in the room upstairs because somebody was watching us. And then we'd go home to the haunted house and sit there terrified because somebody was watching us. Yeah.
Must have just been completely, desensitized to it in a way, just completely fine with that. And I do appreciate that. Lots of people do live their lives like that. I think we've always had spooky stuff go on in our house as well. So, it is kind of normal for some of us, isn't it? But still really interesting. I've really, really enjoyed chatting to you both. And I feel like there's lots more we can talk about too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll send you those pictures, and
it's great to be in touch.
Yes.
Staffordshire sounds incredible, and I'm sure I'm gonna Zoopla Staffordshire now.
Staffordshire Moorlands.
Because now I want to live in the countryside in Staffordshire and find all these amazing places.
Yeah, they've got the stones as well. We can tell you about that, but they've got the stones on the farmland as you have to drive through the track to get to Hob Meadows, and we think that they could have been the remains of a stone circle there, because there's a couple of big ones that have been moved and scattered and put elsewhere, etc.
Probably, yeah. So you should definitely see if you can find any do any research on that, because I wouldn't be surprised at all.
Yeah.
With all of the activity going on there.
Yes,
absolutely. And that's what used to happen. They did used to just use them in the farmhouses. It happens in Jersey a lot.
Yeah.
You get the remains of megaliths and
Yeah,
dolmens,
exactly.
and they just get put into houses. It was a bit of a nuisance for the farmers a lot of the time, but also
Yeah.
it was stone, it was usable. So yeah, let me know about that then. Lots of love to you both.
Time to
Well, I'm sure you would want to join me in thanking our fantastic guests, Gemma and Kate, for sharing their experiences. There was so much here, and it's at times like this that I wish I could produce weekly episodes, as I think I could undertake a whole mini-series on the shares here, the folklore and modern accounts that accompany Staffordshire. Perhaps we shall return to these locations and stories at a later date, but for the time being, the few that really stand out for me are the gnomes in the carpet and the arrival of the raven. I also find it interesting that the women use the term, "No, not today, thanks," like their mother did. This really interests me because it's an acknowledgement that these beings just exist all around us, and it's a bit like shooing off somebody that comes to the door that you don't have time for. And my question about whether they ever turn to actually connect with these beings was one that I had pondered on. But it really does show that through the generations, this family has been very aware of these beings on the property, in their homes, in their lives, as perhaps our previous generations had been. It's just a simple fact of life. We're here getting on with our business, and they are there, and sometimes we interact with them. So I really do love that, because it harks back to another way of being, which I think many of us perhaps still follow in some ways. But then I realise when I hear it, the idea of that can feel unusual for some people. On previous episodes of this podcast, Dr. Jack Hunter has spoken of observing processions of small creatures that he described as being goblin-like. He observed this when he was younger at a friend's house when he had taken his first mushroom trip. So if you want to hear him talking about that, that's episode 25. And Dr. Neil Rushton in episode 12 has spoken about his sightings of small fairy-like entities which he observes in his home since he developed Charles Bonnet syndrome. In Arrival of the Fairy Host, episode 31, our guest describes as a child watching a procession of fairies enter her room and proceed onto her bed. In this encounter, she was also clear that there was a leader among the procession who was directing activities, very much like the leader that Gemma described. For Jack, the entities followed the grain of wood on the chest of drawers where the goblin creatures were viewed. For our guest here in this episode, they followed the pattern of the carpet. What is happening here? What is it about the patterns that is so meaningful? The edge of the rug marked a threshold. The door of the chest was open. Do details like these provide access points into the other world? It puts me in mind of those wardrobe doors slightly ajar that made you feel creeped out as a child. Even now, I have to get up in the night to firmly close cupboards and drawers. These experiences feel very real to their observers. The entities seem to have a purpose. Do these purposes include some particular effects on those individuals' consciousness? We need to start talking more about this. Many of us are so eager to learn about the true nature of this world we live in. Disputing these experiences as delusions or hallucinations just won't wash as far as I'm concerned. The story of the raven is also very thrilling to hear. Ravens, the largest birds in the corvid family, are well known in folklore as Psychopomps, creatures who lead the recently deceased souls to and from the afterlife as part of the transmigration process. The Morrigan famously takes the form of the raven, as does the Welsh god Bran the Blessed. In Native American mythology, they are messenger spirits and can be guardians of magic, and in Northern European folklore, they were also viewed as guides for the dead. Odin himself, who is known by one of his names as God of the Ravens, had 2 ravens, Hugin, thought, and Munin, memory, who flew about the world, gathering knowledge and reporting back, similar to Leek, the Irish god, who also had 2 ravens. In Marazion, Cornwall, the belief in metempsychosis, the transmigration of souls, remained strong into the 19th century. It was reported in Notes and Queries in 1853 that the belief remained that King Arthur did not die, but by magic arts was turned into a raven, or would one day reign again. You can imagine my delight when I visited Cornwall some years ago and caught a terrific photo of a raven perched atop a sign to Tintagel Castle. Gemma also mentions the anomalous lights she has been spotting on her Ring camera of late in her she-shed. I do find these videos very interesting, but I simply have no idea when it comes to this sorts of phenomena, because I don't know anything about videos or filming. I'm making a call out to anyone who considers themselves a believer but is well versed in videography and may be able to advise Gemma on her collected video collection. Since we recorded this interview, she's captured a great deal of activity going on in her garden via further Ring cameras, which she cannot explain, but she would like answers to. So get into contact with me if you feel you have sufficient knowledge and experience to be able to aid her investigation. That's at scarletofthefae@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening to the end. I do appreciate it. If you're enjoying the show, please consider joining the Patreon group to support it. It's £3 a month. If I can get to 300 supporters, I'll begin producing weekly episodes. So this is a direct call out for your support, if you can, to join our community and not only get access to lots of bonus content, but also meet other like-minded folks in our Discord channel and at upcoming events and our monthly Zooms. I'm taking some time to slow down at the moment after a recent injury, and in doing so, I'm remembering that it's at these times that we hear messages most strongly about which directions we're heading in, and what feels right for us at any given time. Most of all, right now, I do feel very humbled to say, truthfully, that I very much feel the support of those unseen, whoever they are, and I am eternally grateful for that. I love making these episodes and meeting others who, like me, have experienced firsthand that there is more to this world than we understand, and that whatever or wherever it is, learning about these beings and these worlds is integral to our evolution and learning of our human existence. And it starts with coming together, listening deeply, and deciding to remain curious.